I got ADHD, baby. I set my goals, not your expectations, baby. I need my tools and a brain vacation, baby. Neurodivergent flow, no limitation, baby.
Thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. I know this topic in particular is a real passion of yours.
Mhm.
So if you don't mind, if you can introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of get into it. And and also hello everybody. Hi, I'm Megan. If you are new, if you are new to my channel, my name is Megan, and I am an ADHD coach. I work with women with ADHD and helping them thrive at work and in life. And so I do one-on-one and group coaching. And so that's a little bit about me. And this is my guest, Annette. And please tell your story.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for having me. So my name's Annette Lang. I am also an ADHD coach, but I come at this from, of course, very ADHD different directions. My initial position in life was I was a Wall Street analyst. I have an MBA in finance. So I have a lot of experience with big numbers, big budgets, things like that. And then I've also been a school teacher. I've done a lot of different things, but what drew me to ADHD and money as a really important topic is, as we know, with ADHD, there are issues with organization, with time management, all your basic, executive functions that can really, and we'll get more into that as we talk, but that can really mess you up with paying bills, things like that. But there are also is the one that I find the most troublesome is really the impulsivity, because
Mhm.
just so much, oh, I need to get that. Oh, I want to buy that. And of course, everybody who's, and any company is loving that, and what
Yeah.
ends up, unfortunately, is that ADHDers, get themselves into situations and trouble, and they feel shame and they feel guilt. And I know when I talked to you about getting on here with this topic, I shared a really disturbing statistic, which I am going to share again because it's,
Me
it's something
too.
you should know, is that ADHDers have a 4 times higher risk of suicide due to financial issues than neurotypicals. 4 times. Okay.
That's great. And just a little trigger warning. Sorry, I feel like we should have
Oh, I'm
started with a little
sorry.
bit of trigger warning.
I should have said that. Um,
Um, yeah.
so so I felt I could take my skills that I had learned back in the day when I was a Wall Streeter and combine them with my coaching and offer a service. And I mean, I coach on other issues as well, but in this case, offer a service that I think a lot of people would benefit from. So that's why.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, similar with me too. Just thinking about like combining my experience, right? Mine is in HR and within operations and education, and combining it to really help people get access to better support services with navigating the work environment, right? And so that's what we do. Sometimes we use our experiences and really be able to create something that's going to serve a purpose. What do they call it? Like your I'll think
So
about it. Say that one more time.
synergies, synergy.
No, your pain becomes your purpose.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, that's true. That is. And I will say
um,
that despite my background, I also had that pain. I could do a $250 million budget, no problem. But I had to go to a credit counselor because I got myself in trouble with my credit cards when I was younger. So having the knowledge doesn't always translate into the action. So,
yeah. So So you talked briefly, you mentioned a couple of the areas in which money can be really challenging for ADHD and that impulsivity. And then somebody actually want to make sure that we get to this too. They put it in the comment in the chat. It's like tips for making spending money on impulse not being such a dopamine hit. I feel like we'll touch on that a little bit.
yeah. Oh,
Um, but so when it comes to money, the other things that come in mind outside of impulsivity is, and you mentioned like the fear and the shame that can come along with that, and just like the avoidance, like just avoiding your money because there's so many feelings and emotions that come tied to it. So like the emotional dysregulation piece and how that not just impacts spending, but impacts our ability to avoid or to just ignore. our financial life, right? And so,
Absolutely.
um,
I'm,
yeah, this is such an important topic.
there-
I'm glad we're talking about it. And then it's April, so hello, money month. We're in second quarter of the year. Let's make sure we get our money right before we finish out the year, right? Like
yeah,
we want to make sure we're doing it now.
especially, taxes are due in a couple of weeks. I don't know how many people are avoiding dealing with their taxes right now. So if that's you, it's coming. We have to look at it. You may be getting money back. You don't know. Take a look. But
Mhm.
especially right, there's so much uncertainty out there with how much it costs to buy things, whether people are going to have the jobs that
Mhm.
that they currently, so much of that is happening. And so, consumer confidence is way down. So it's really, really even more
Mhm.
to know your money and to get it right and to own it. And I think that's a really hard thing for a lot of people to do, and particularly for the ADHD population. It's tough.
It
It is.
is. And, we'll talk about some tips, and I don't mind being the guinea pig in this conversation because, I mean, let's just say that this conversation is very timely for me. Personally, as a business owner with ADHD, right? And so because, there's personal finance and then business finance, and being on top of both and realizing, like, even just for me last night, I was up until 1 o'clock in the morning trying to get all of my documents and paperwork and tracking all of my expenses and income together
Hmm.
last night, and thinking about, like, I had a tight deadline and trying to make that turnaround happen, but then also noticing patterns, like, man, like I really need to put into some systems in place. And I'm like, man, I need to follow my own advice as a coach.
Oh yeah, percent. I mean, that happens to me all that with a lot of things, but yeah, absolutely. And there are things that are part of the ADHD, cake that we're all eating, that is, that affects us. But there are also things that affect everybody. Your background, like, I mean, I grew up with nothing. Okay, so how does that impact my spending? Not,
Mhm.
now it doesn't, but I first started making money, I was like, wee, so things like that, your values, your goals, all of those things are wrapped up in that. But then again, the ADHD piece really, really can, make it just exacerbates it. I mean,
Mhm.
the impulsivity, and also, organization, time blindness. Okay, how we have, this, oh, taxes aren't today, they're down the road.
Mhm.
Okay, worry about it. Suddenly down the road is today.
Mhm.
Um, Saving for things, again, if we're talking about saving for something long term, that's, again, with time blindness, that's an issue as well.
Mhm.
Um, Emotional dysregulation, huge, huge. Okay, I'm upset about something, my emotions are big. We
Right.
been taught retail therapy, which
That's, yeah.
makes me mad. But so there's that piece of it, and then there's also just, as you said, somebody mentioned the dopamine hit. Oh, I see this cute outfit, or I see this great thing for my kid, and the dopamine rise that you get from that, and that's difficult to address. It
It
really
is.
is.
And it can happen throughout the day, especially with the convenience of just going online and pushing buy. Like, you don't even have to put all of your credit card information
Well,
right now.
that
You can just store it all into the system and push buy now.
well,
One click
that
buying.
is one of my tips, is actually take your credit card information off your laptop, off your phone if possible. I know that's a tough one, because, like, I know, I use it for like the subway or whatever, but
Yeah.
definitely off the top, because you want to have the action slowed down,
Hmm.
and you can just hit, yes, that's my credit card. That's it. And if
Right.
you actually go to your wallet, get your credit card, put it in, it may cause you to hesitate and say, wait a minute, what am I doing? So
Yeah.
that's one of the little tips.
It gives you some time to stop and think, but it also gives you time to be distracted, if I'm being honest. So it's like almost like using the other parts of your ADHD to your advantage, right? Like you know that if there's too many steps, sometimes you can actually get distracted. But in this case, like if you have a goal that you're trying to save money, you're trying to pay off credit card bills, you're trying to save you're trying to debt, then go ahead and access some of those quote unquote weaker executive functions and allow them to work for you. And so that's one thing, like we're making extra steps to make it harder for you to purchase.
Yes,
Um,
that's it definitely helps. Or another one, and this is a big one for like if you are an impulsive shopper, is putting things in the cart, but not give it 24 hours, 48 hours. I've done that. Um, at this point, it's a habit, and I cannot tell you how many times I go back to that cart and I say, "Oh, I don't want that."
yeah.
What am I doing there?
Yeah.
You know.
I do that too. Actually, I have a whole cart right now of things. And I'm like, oh, I want to buy this. I want to buy this. And then what gets me too is like when I start to see the total price, I'm like, oh, wait, I don't actually want to spend that much money. It was one thing when it was 19.99 for this one particular item, but now that I have a cart of all of the things that my mind told me that I needed to have today, and now it's like $400 or $500, I'm like, oh, wait,
Well, that
actually.
yeah, absolutely. And that's another issue, another executive function issue is like
Mhm.
when we're all, you know, trying to keep it all in your head and being like, okay, well, I just picked this up and I picked this up and I picked that up. And when you see the total, you say, oh my God, what am I doing here?
Right.
But that, being able to take that information in and actually do something with it while you're shopping and saying like, oh wait, no, I just was buying that, so I'm going to put this back.
Mhm.
That's another ADHD issue. So we have
Yeah,
that.
and you see it show up not just in like your Amazon cart but also um and just to be clear, like businesses know that this happens, and so they structure aisles, they structure advertisements, they structure commercials all around this, like it's all psychological at the end of the day. But and just trying to think about when this stuff shows up, like so for example, like the grocery store. If you So there's the ADHD that kind of hates going grocery shopping because it's like information overload. And then there's the ADHD that actually doesn't mind shopping, going to the grocery store because it's like the opportunity to be creative in like the cooking space. And both can get you in trouble when it comes to spending money, like overspending, right? Like one, you're just like, let me just get a whole bunch of stuff just so that I can get out of this place. And then the other, and not really taking the time to think about what it is that you actually need,
Mm-hmm.
and potentially purchasing the wrong things, and then get home and be like, okay, well, what am I actually supposed to be able to do with these ingredients?
With this.
Or,
Yeah. And
yeah, or you're like me and I buy everything because I get excited.
mm-hmm.
Oh, this is exciting. Like, oh, I can make this dish. Oh, I can make this dish. Oh, I can make this dish, realizing that I can only eat so much food in 1 week. And
Yeah, I mean, as I just cleaned out my refrigerator this weekend, and RIP to all the vegetables that I thought I was going to eat because they were all just wilted and gross and got thrown away, and it's terrible. And that's that planning piece, and you are
Mhm.
100% right when you say like businesses know this. I mean, they, I was a marketing major in college, and then I have my master's in finance, and I learned how grocery stores work and why certain things are on the top shelf and those end caps that have the
Mhm.
point of purchase things. I mean, I shop at Trader Joe's for groceries, and I'm always like, oh, I'll get that chocolate to eat on the way home. That wasn't on the list, you know?
Right. And then, and it reminds me of all the extra things you end up buying or just throwing away because you're not using them. It's like the ADHD
Yes.
tax. Um, And for those that are not familiar with that term, it's really thinking about all the extra money that we're spending as a result of like the impact of ADHD. And so one of them, just for continuity, thinking about the grocery store. You go to the grocery store, you buy all these things because you don't actually have the capacity to use them. Like you're not eating that many meals. Like how many cucumbers do you need, right? And so, but then now at the end of the week, they're all rotten because potentially you didn't store them properly to like make sure that they lasted a little bit longer. And now you're literally throwing money away. Um,
Absolutely. And then this, you know, and sometimes you'll think to yourself, well, okay, it's a couple of cucumbers, who cares? But it does reverberate, because what happens is, whether it's being too excited in the store and not, thinking through like, what do I need? Or that, I'm going to get the dopamine hit from shopping on Amazon or at Madewell or whatever it is. You start to, it sets up this cycle, because
Mhm.
that dopamine hit, you say, that's great, I'm going to make all these things, and then you bring it home or it gets delivered to your house and you're like, okay, what did I do here? And that's when
Mhm.
you feel that guilt, and you start to feel that shame of, I can't control myself, what is wrong with
Mhm.
adult, I should be able to do this. And this cycle continues, because then when you're feeling down, you say, well, I'm just going to scroll through my phone, buy something else, and it keeps going. and
Mhm.
and what can happen with something like that, which really makes it even more serious, is ultimately, unless you are buying things that you really can afford, okay,
Mhm.
which, on a regular basis, may be using a credit card for this, okay? You're using your credit card, and you're now accruing balances on your credit card.
Mhm.
Very save money for anything when you have credit card balances. And then
Yeah.
and it just rolls and rolls and rolls. And I've had clients who have come to me with mounds of debt, and I'm not talking about student loan debt or mortgages. I'm talking about just credit card debt, where they are paying 25%
Yeah.
interest, $20,000, $30,000 of just stuff. Or they spent so much of their money on stuff that when they had a true emergency and they really needed to use the credit card, and that's, we've done that, then they didn't have the money in their savings to cover the emergency. And so now they're using a credit card for that. And it's very hard to get out of. And it's very scary.
Yeah. Yeah. It can spiral really
Yeah.
quickly. Um, it can spiral really quickly. And also, I just, this conversation made me think about some of the other things that kind of come up is, thinking about with ADHD and you get extra creative and also like the social justice piece and you don't like have this desire to not be wasteful.
Mm-hmm.
And if you experience that and then going back to my cucumbers, and so if you throw away the cucumbers rotten and now you're like, well, I don't want to throw this away. This is full of seeds. Then you take the seeds out and then you're like, I'm going to garden them. And now you have a completely new hobby.
Mm-hmm. What?
And now you're buying gardening gloves, and now you're buying shovels, now you're buying fertilizer, and the money that you just like it would have been cheaper to just buy new cucumbers than it would to now take on this additional hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend to sometimes go all in
Yes.
on the new hobby of the week. And then we have purchased everything
Mm-hmm.
related to that hobby just so that we can do it for a couple of weeks. And our brain's like, oh, this isn't fun anymore. And then you never see it again.
Right, exactly. And then all of it goes on the shelf of, hobbies of ghosts of hobbies past, where it's just, okay, there's my gardening stuff, there's my knitting stuff, there's my, ceramic stuff. Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
it does. It,
Um,
it can get, and it's interesting too, because sometimes, like, I'll say to clients, like, and this is what I like to call virtuous spending. So people are like, well, it was on sale. And it's like, yeah,
mhm.
didn't need five of them or whatever it is, or it was a gift for someone. And those are lovely thoughts, but if you can't afford it, you don't have to buy somebody a $200 gift, or
Right.
it's vintage, or, things like that. And same thing with the one that was actually very funny is I had a client and she's like, but I love to read. I've been buying books. And she expected me to say, oh, well, that's okay. And I said, do you have a library near you?
Right.
It was like, she looked at me like I had said, like, are you going to cut your hand off? Like, she was just like, what? I'm like, library are great. Try one out. So, I think sometimes, and same thing with the cucumber seeds, that's a form of virtuous spending. Great. If you can't afford it, it's not okay.
Right.
That's
Right.
get
Okay.
you.
And, and asking yourself some really hard questions around what is the difference between a desire, a need, a want, and being very clear about that for you, and then making decisions based on those definitions, right? And being okay with that too. And then again, people that are coming in and out are listening. We're talking about ADHD and money, and feel free to go ahead and ask any questions in the chat, and we'll get to them also.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so just that would be another tip, like being very clear about the difference between a need and a want.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also not just a need and a need and a want, not just in terms of like, do I want this item, but what level of item?
Mhm.
I'm a long distance runner, so I can justify, getting myself really good running shoes because I do need to, otherwise I'm going to hurt myself a lot.
Right.
But I don't need to get myself all new running clothes and, different things for every race. Not at all. And I can tell myself I do, but I don't need it. I want it. So yes, it's, what level, it's not just the product itself, but what level of product do you actually need? You don't need the best of the best for most things, or
Right.
expensive items for most things.
Yeah, and
So
and also, I mean, and this may be a personal philosophy, but just recognizing that just because you're spending more doesn't mean that you're actually getting a better product.
absolutely.
And now, in some cases, you are, and then other cases, like you might not be. And to what extent or what type of quality are you willing to have, right? Like if you're, especially if you're a runner, like having high quality running shoes is really important because you will mess your body up if you
I,
then. Yeah, me too. And so like I will spend some money on some really high quality running shoes, because if I don't, then I'm spending money on the chiropractor, the podiatrist, and spending money on the
oh,
chiropractor. So like you're gonna spend the money somewhere, but like where do you want to spend it? Do you want to spend it on doctor's appointments, or do you want to spend it on a good pair of shoes? Um, and so making some clear rules or hard decisions when it comes to where you're going to put your money.
absolutely.
Well,
Where you're putting your money, and also just, you know using your ADHD, skills to help you with that.
yeah.
Okay, we all go down the rabbit hole, we know that. Use that. Okay, don't just assume this item that's more expensive is the better item. Okay,
Mhm.
do some research. I'm giving you permission, go down the rabbit hole. You know, it's a, and I do that all the time because, you'd be shocked. There are times where, like, the New York Times does a lot of, product testing and stuff, and they'll always put in like the budget, item, which
Mhm.
certainly budget, but budget compared to what they're recommending. And they'll say this is just as good as the more expensive item.
Mhm.
Might not look quite as sharp, but it's just as good. So do the research. Absolutely.
Right. And so we've already pointed out two areas of ADHD that can get you in trouble in one way, but actually be really beneficial when it comes to managing your money. And so one was giving intentionally providing distractions for yourself to stop yourself from doing the extra spending. And then also going down the little research rabbit hole so you can kind of save a little bit of money along the way. Do you also work with couples or navigating the money dynamics? Because people always get like
I
always.
Yeah, I have. It can be very tricky. I worked with a couple that both had ADHD, and that was actually fine. Like we all sort of spoke the same language and whatever.
Mhm.
And did work with one couple that one person had ADHD and one didn't, and the one who didn't really get how ADHD and money are related. And as much as I tried to, bring that forward, they were not seeing it. So they were just like, control yourself. And it's like, it's like, it,
No deal.
yeah, it's like the equivalent of, get a planner. Like, it's just, okay, that's, you cured us. Thanks. So it can be difficult. One of the things I do recommend though is, and I recommend this for people to do individually, or if they're, whether it's they're with a partner or spouse, or also business partner as
Mhm.
well, to um, I like to call it the money meeting, and it's basically it's something that I think should happen at least once a week. Um, I love to I do it. I love to bring myself a little snack, and I'm like all set up, just like I'm having a client meeting or whatever, and to go over where you're at. And actually, I back up a little bit with that, because what when people come to me with these issues, they feel a lot of embarrassment, and
Mhm.
part of my job is to make sure they understand, like, this is not a moral failure on your part.
Yeah.
This is just, you have your brain works differently, and we have to find ways to have your brain work with your money situation. So initially I'll tell people, just check your balance every day, like sort of dip their toe in the water a bit,
Mhm.
check your balance every day, check your credit cards, see if you can sort of see any patterns, things like that. But ultimately, what I do like is this money meeting situation. And if you're dealing with a couple, it gives them the opportunity to together look at what's going on,
Mhm.
what went, what came in, what left, and discuss where they want to be in the future. Do they have goals? Um, College, kids' college, retirement. I mean, all these things do, pop up quicker than you would think. And to actually have that open discussion between two people, because without that, you start to get into, and I've seen people do it, sneak packages in and things like that. And you get into a relationship dynamic where it's sort of parent and child versus partner and partner. And
Right.
that's in my book.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree, and I witnessed it when I used to, a long time ago. I used to work at a department store in the shoe department, and the amount of people that would come in there and say, "I don't need a box." I'm like, "Don't even worry about it. I'm just going to sneak this inside sneak this inside the house."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To avoid conversations about spending. The other thing that came up for me while we were talking is that I feel like can really impact the ADHD is managing money during transitions. So whether or not that is like if you feel like you have control over your finances, you have some systems in place, but then life shifts. So whether or not that's having a baby, whether or not that's getting married, whether or not that's ending a marriage, whether or not that's getting out of any type of relationship, whether or not that's moving, whether or not it's taking care of an elder or another family member, and just thinking about all of the emotional regulation and work that needs to go in to recognize like this is not the same situation that was before that I had handled. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
now I need to revisit it,
Mm-hmm.
readjust strategies, readjust like my finances, readjust my conversations, and deal with whatever feelings I may be having at the moment so that I can get back on track.
Mm-hmm. That absolutely is a consideration. The first thing I would say about that is there should be a certain baseline system set up.
Mm-hmm.
So you, when you are not thinking about your money situation, things are still happening. So, for example, putting your bills on auto pay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I have my credit cards on auto pay for the minimum only, because I don't want some, money just coming out without me knowing about it, but just for the minimum to keep my credit rating solid. I did
Mm-hmm.
actually during the pandemic, because I thought if I get sick, that's going to be the last thing I'm going to be thinking about is paying my credit card bill. I'm going to be
Yeah.
well. So I, had that set up. So having those kinds of things in place so that when other things are shifting, you're not losing ground in terms of your credit score, which is really important to keep as high as you can get it to be. So that's one thing. And the other is, as much as it's not necessarily fun, it's really important to have some money tucked away for an emergency. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a course a video course that is available, which we can talk about. But one of the things I do talk about is before you start saving for vacations or fun stuff, you really have to have some sort of emergency fund put away so that, again, when your mind isn't on your finances, you still have resources, because
Yeah.
that's really important. I mean, things do change, and I know, having gone through a variety of situations, there are times where you're just like, oh wow, it's May, it's April 2nd. I didn't pay any bills this month. I didn't do it. I forgot, because you're busy or
Yeah.
you're not there. So having those things happen, that's really helpful. And then, as you said, revisiting it in the new
Yep.
situation and saying, what has changed? you
What
know
has changed? And then also remembering to if you get a new credit, like whenever if it is on auto pay,
Mhm.
or like if you're using like a debit card or something like a connected debit card, then making sure that if it expires, making sure that you update that information too, the card information, because then all of a sudden you'll have a late payment or a declined payment, and it's like, oh shoot, I did get a new card,
Yeah.
and making sure that you update the new card. Or sometimes if transactions don't get work, they will just to stop fraud, right? For example, like they just like it happened to my mother the other day, like a bill wasn't paid, it was on auto pay, and it was because the bank issued a new
Yeah.
card.
See, that shouldn't happen, because at this point it should just be a flow to the new card and new card number. But things do
Yeah,
happen. But you set up as best as you can under the circumstances, and then unfortunately glitches are going to take place. But
yeah,
glitch as opposed to 10,
right.
They're, you know, so
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely one that I have definitely used too. Um, and then, does anybody have any questions about ADHD and money? Let me just pause for a second to see if anybody has any thoughts. Um, but money, it can get messy, especially with if you're not addressing the shame and the guilt
Mm,
and all the other emotional drama that can come along with money. um,
oh yeah.
Healing some relationships that you have with money is such an important part of the process.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I was saying, looking at your background and looking at, where you're coming from. If you're
Mhm.
a place of, food insecurity or shelter insecurity, that's going to obviously influence your spending and how you look at money, you know,
Mhm.
for your entire life, really. And being able to connect the dots there and say, okay, I spend as much as I want because when I was younger I couldn't. Is that what I continue doing? So that kind of thing, and being honest with yourself about that, you know. And money is just, it's such a fraught topic. People don't like to talk about it. People are embarrassed. You're taught, like, don't ask people how much they make. It's not okay. It's this like hush hush thing. And we've got to shine some light on it, because if we don't do that, people are going to continue to just pretend that it's okay,
Mhm.
and not
Mhm.
it's not okay.
Mhm.
So that,
Um, and do you work with business owners also?
not really, no. I
Okay.
really, with individuals and families that are having
Okay.
difficulties with that. Business is I mean, I'm qualified to do it, but I really wanted to go with the people who are just, you know, just like me or you or whatever, and are trying to get themselves out of trouble. And it's very gratifying when you see it work,
Yeah.
when you see it
Yeah.
happen,
Yeah.
fortunately.
Okay,
So
good. How long would you say that it takes for somebody, um, well, maybe that's not an appropriate question. I'm just trying to think about like the outcomes like the positive outcomes that you're
mhm.
seeing with your clients, and like how long do you feel like it takes them to,
it,
that probably depends.
it absolutely depends on the situation they're in when they come into it. But I would say, once somebody comes to me and we start talking, just talking about money and putting it out there, as I said, shining a light on it, I would say within, I'd say 6 weeks or so, they're at least starting to see, okay, I am not a bad person. I am
Mhm.
not, I got myself in a situation here. How can I get myself out of it? And
Mhm.
so me, that's a success. Whether it takes after that, it could take 2 years, depending on how much debt they have,
Right.
or it could take a few months. But when they're willing to own, this is my money and I'm in charge of it, and I don't like where it is right now, so I'm going to deal with it. That to me is the big kahuna right there. Is that
Mhm.
hear and see. And I mean, I just came from a session with one of my clients who I had seen a while ago, and then she moved and whatever. She was not, I wasn't seeing her for a while, and then she came back. She's like, now I'm ready. And it was really, really interesting to hear that, because at the time when I first started seeing her, I knew she wasn't. Like, I would say to her, well, we have to do these things, like we have to look at your numbers and we have to, and she was, oh, it's fine, whatever. But now she's ready, and now I'm seeing progress where she's saying things like, oh, I spent too much on this, so now I'm going to not go out to eat this week, or really looking at it from a dollars and cents approach
Yeah.
to that emotional, oh my gosh, like she's just
Yeah. And I feel like I've been talking about this all day today, but it just keeps being relevant. But what I'm going to be starting to do with my own clients is doing like a ready to change assessment.
mhm,
Um, and just to gain some clarity around like where they are in that change process,
mhm.
so that we can build in the right interventions for that particular phase. Um,
That's interesting. Have you done like motivational interviewing?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll share it too. It's in my email. So just remind,
I,
send me a message. The
I,
psychology,
I need that.
yeah, it's a psychology.com like assessment that is accessible that we can use in just assessing their readiness for change.
Mhm.
But that would make a really big difference because you really need to know where you're starting so that you know where you're
Yeah,
going.
yeah,
Same, I mean, with anything really, but then your money too. It's like how you're going to know what growth looks like if you don't know where you're starting from.
right.
Somebody said, my problem is I'm still catching up with money because I have a problem swiping. Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
You
yes.
have to stop
We
swiping.
have to stop swiping. Swiping is addictive in all forms. And yes, but again, take your credit card information, Apple Pay, or off of your phone. Okay. I know that convenient at times when you have to go, when you want to get an Uber or something like that. But if you just have the information in the app that you need it for, so for Uber, for Subways, for Lyft, but don't have it just in an Apple Pay or Google Pay situation,
Yeah.
you won't be for your basic swiping. And then that slows you down. And again,
Right.
Megan said, you might get distracted by something else. And that's, I was envisioning myself going to my wallet and saying, oh, I got to clean my pocketbook out and just doing that. So, but yeah, that can help with that. The other thing is too, I'm not a huge, like Pinterest person, but a lot of people find that using Pinterest helps them with this, with the swiping, because rather than swipe to buy, they are, uh, collecting it, but online.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah.
to think about, if you are a Pinterest person, to up your Pinterest game for that. It's,
That's how I think about putting items in my cart
yeah,
is it's like I'm purchasing it, but not really.
yeah,
Um,
hmm,
um,
absolutely.
because it allows you some space to think. Because sometimes you're just buying things and it feels necessary, and then you're like, wait, but my house is really small. Like, do I really need this 7 foot shelf? Like, yes, do I need some storage? But like, is this shelf actually going to work for my space? And so just it gives you a second to kind of answer some rational questions around like, does this purchase actually make
Right.
sense?
And
Um,
the other thing too is to have a number in your mind, depending on your financial situation, of, if I want to purchase something above X dollars, I'm going to talk to a friend, talk to my partner,
right.
it is, because, those bigger purchases, sure, you can return it, especially and that's one thing that about Amazon. I mean, you can buy it and then you can very easily give it back, and there's no shame in giving it, telling you now. But with something larger, sometimes, again, we get sucked into the, oh, it's on sale and I really would love to have a new TV or whatever. As far as my budget goes, that's something I will discuss with my partner. I will also
Right.
discuss it, if something else, I will discuss with a friend, and especially a friend who might say to me, like, are you sure you need that? You know?
Right. Yeah, some other couple of pointers is one, pay yourself first, and having multiple accounts. So having an account that you actually don't have a card for,
Yes.
but you can transfer money automatically to, and that account can be used for savings. So, like, when I say pay yourself first, it's like, literally pay yourself first, and have money transferred from one account to your savings that you don't actually touch because you don't actually have a card to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then that way you can start to automatically save some money. But then also, what came in mind for me is, oh shoot, I'll think about it again. I promise.
You
It
can also
was such a good point.
You can also, depending on where you work, sometimes they do have payroll deduction where they will, have savings that, and I'm not talking about, 401k, I'm talking about regular savings, although 401k is great too. That'll basically, you won't see the money. The money will go
Oh yeah, you can. I
for you.
usually do that. You can take your check and you can split it. So if you do a direct deposit,
Mhm.
you can have a certain percentage to go into your checking list for stuff that you use on a regular basis, and then you can have another chunk of the money go to a savings account that you just never see. So what you see go into your account is what you're going to be spending,
Right,
and that will allow you to, like, kind of hide money from yourself
right.
essentially.
You can do that. I know certain banks, I think Cap One does this, and Ally, and I'm sure there are other ones as well. You can have savings buckets buckets within your checking account. So if you are putting money away for your bills and also accruing some money because your dog's going to need a surgery and for a vacation, it'll take all your money and split it up that way. And you name those buckets so that
Yeah,
okay, dipping into my vacation fund to buy this. Do I really want to do that? So that's really helpful too.
yeah.
There are tons of, there are many, many strategies out there. The important thing to do, you can try lots of different things. And if something sticks, that's great. If something sticks for 2 weeks and then you're not going to do it anymore, something else can take its place. That's okay. But it's also important to understand what your issue is, because if you
Mhm.
just start things at your problem and not really knowing what the problem is, it's going to take a lot of energy and not necessarily reap results. So, understanding, like, okay, I keep spending my savings would have a different strategy than, oh, temporal discounting, where buying something today is more valuable to me than buying
Mhm.
on the road. So it's good to do that analysis, ahead of time, and say, okay, where is this problem coming from, so that you can find the right strategy for it.
Oh wait, I think I missed some comments. Uh, Let me see. Big grad school debt in my 30s has continued, and now I'm 50. My husband and I felt like we had to take out a HELOC, and now pulling from his 401k. It's suffocating. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's student loan debt is, it can be absolutely crippling. And
Mhm.
you're 18 or 20, and then all of a sudden you're like, I can't buy a house, I can't do these different things. I would suggest, in a situation like that where you are now taking additional debt to cover the debt, and pulling from retirement, um, you might want to, that's beyond what I would do with a client. I would say try to speak to a financial consultant or a financial planner
Yeah.
to help that, because that's big dollars. And the issue with pulling from your retirement is, I can tell you, I'm 65. It happens like that.
Mhm.
And then you're like, so,
Yeah.
but I would say talk to a financial planner, either at your bank or look for someone who doesn't charge you fees for the planning,
Yeah.
who's not charge you an upfront fee for it. That's important.
Yeah. And that's, that's a good point in general too. It's like you don't have to solve all of your money problems by yourself. So sometimes it can feel like, well, I caused this problem. I'm the only one that can provide a solution. And as creative as we can be, not all of us are into money. And so accessing the brain of somebody who understands the dollar or whatever your currency is, depending on where you're listening this,
True.
listening to this, but recognizing that there's somebody that understands the system a little bit better than you because that's their focus, that's their level of expertise, and being able to kind of pick their brain a little bit and get that help is important
Yeah,
to do. You don't have to do this
you
alone.
definitely don't. And, someone like me can help you with, the day-to-day budgeting and getting your credit cards paid off or whatever. But I have a financial planner for my retirement fund
Mhm.
because I don't have the expertise to play the stock market, and somebody else is doing it for me, and hopefully successfully. And
Right.
act, it's good to tap into. And same thing with people will like doing your taxes. If you have a very simple tax return, you have wages and and you're taking a standard deduction, doing it yourself is fine. But if you have a situation that's at all complicated by whether it's, child support, alimony, a business, whatever it is,
Hmm.
um, just do it once, to go to an accountant and have them do it, because they know the rules, and they know the different ways you can take it, the different things you can take advantage of to lower your tax bill.
Right.
So, you don't have to do it every time, but doing it, I had when I started my business, I went to someone and said, please do my taxes, because I didn't know how to do taxes for a business, and that's their job. And it was
Right.
worth it. It really was.
Yeah, and so just remember you can outsource these things. And also just thinking, it just made me think about like you're not gonna if you're having a health challenge, right? You're not going to go to anybody. If you're having a teeth issue, you're gonna go to a dentist. Like you're not gonna go to the mom and pop store to try to figure out how to handle an issue when you really need a root canal, right? And so it's really going to the source of information that people can really help you navigate the challenges that you may be experiencing with money.
Absolutely. And, one of the other professionals that I do recommend to clients, and as I said before, I had to use myself, is a credit counselor. If you have a lot of credit card debt, and be careful with this, because there are credit counselors out there that will just charge a lot of money, and they're not necessarily doing what you need them to do. You want to go to a not-for-profit credit counselor. A lot of states and municipalities do have credit counselors on staff. And what they can do for you is they can negotiate with the credit card companies to stop charging you interest, and then give you a budget of, this is how much you have to pay. They'll consolidate all your cards and you make one payment to them. And now when you do that, you cannot use your credit card.
Yep.
Okay, so that's in mind. But if you are in a situation where you owe a lot of money and cannot figure out how to get out of it, it's a great way to get a fresh start.
Yeah.
And that's helpful as well.
Yeah. And I'm really hoping that this conversation normalizes money. And then it's not this secretive or exclusive topic. It shouldn't be not anything that you need to be ashamed about. Literally, everybody has to deal with money. Like, you're not going to be able to function in this world without dealing with money. Um, and so, like, I'm hoping that we can release some shame that we may be experiencing in this particular conversation and normalize talking about money, normalizing challenges that we may be experiencing with money, normalizing the things that we figured out and sharing that information. Like if anybody is listening to this and has tips that really worked for them, then put it in the chat and making sure that we all are recognizing that we're not all bad with money, right? Like there's some of us that are actually really good with money.
Mhm.
It's a hyper focus of ours, and it's an area of interest, and we don't have a challenge with that, right? And so, but we teach it to somebody else, please too. Like we need to be able to have these honest conversations with our family members, with our peers, and our, within our social circles, and not feel like it's a taboo conversation. Like we need to release the taboo-ness from money and really talk about it. I think we have some more comments in the chat.
We have.
Um, what do you think about bankruptcy?
Okay, that's a big topic.
Yeah.
Again, you know, when it's necessary, it's a great thing to be able to do, but it's not something, it depends on the situation. Again, I would say in a case where if you are considering bankruptcy, you should seek the help of a financial planner or an attorney,
Yeah.
because that's on the scope of what I do. And good luck. I hope it works out.
Yes, I was gonna say, yeah, you need to reach out. Sorry, something dropped and it scared me. Yes, I would definitely, reach out to a professional. But like, that's the point of part of this conversation too, is like recognizing what is actually happening and then find the professional that you need to talk to really address it.
Right.
And we're here to help navigate some aspects of the challenges that come with ADHD and money, but then there are other people that you need to go to get a deeper dive into like investments, like managing larger estates and real estates and multi-generational things, challenges that come up with money too. And so there's financial advisors, there's planners, there's consultants, there's nonprofit, there's your credit union.
Mhm.
A lot of these other companies like have services that can really help pinpoint that particular issue. And don't feel like you need to go for one person for everything either,
Right.
um, because most likely one person isn't going to know everything. And so identifying what that challenge is, identifying the person that you need to go to talk about it and let them answer that particular
The
question.
other thing too, if depending on where you're working, just like you can there, and I can't remember the acronym for it now, but when you can go and get help with, mental health or different things, they have different services. Megan, help me out here. You know what I'm talking about. You know how they have, is it?
Oh, the
Yeah.
EAP, the Employee
And
Assistance Program.
yes,
Hmm.
you can use an employee assistance program to get the names of people to help you in these situations.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's true. So somebody else had said about how you can have the ADHD task kind of work for you. It's like, um, it's really just saving money and a lot of different places and allowing it to earn interest. Yep.
Okay. So basically hiding it from yourself,
Yeah,
which is,
hiding it from yourself in places that have high yield interest, so that you can let your money make money,
yeah,
essentially.
and not have easy access to it, not have it be the type of situation where if you have to transfer that money, there's going to be a fee associated with it. So you're not going to do it,
Right.
just leave it there,
Yeah. Yeah. And so, what is the root of it all? Understanding how your ADHD brain works. What are your triggers? What are your habits? What are your routines that are getting in the way of you being successful managing your money? And then building into some supports.
Yeah. The other thing that can be very helpful, and this is a scary one for a lot of people, but if you really want to learn how to have control over your money, try to go to a cash basis for things, not for paying your rent or bills, but after you pay your bills, saying, okay, this is how much I have left, and basically have an envelope with cash of this is for eating out, this is for groceries. This is how people used to budget back well before the internet,
Right.
and I'm not advocating to do it for the rest of your life, but to get a feel for, oh, wow, there's only $40 left in this envelope. If I want to go out to eat, I have to take it from that envelope. Once you've done that for a couple of cycles, then you can graduate to a budget app that's similar to that, or a spreadsheet or something else. But that's a great way to get control of what you're doing. And that's kind of a fun ADHD type of
Hmm.
thing do too, because it's like you have all these envelopes and you can I'm going to move this to here and this that you can really get very focused on it, trust me.
Yeah. You can, just don't lose it.
Right.
Don't
No,
don't
don't
lose
take
the
it
money.
with you. Keep it at home. Don't tell people I have all this money in cash in my house. Bad idea.
Right. So I know we're approaching up an hour and I don't want to take up too much of your time, your precious time. So thank you for even just taking the time to come on here. So talk to us a little bit about the program that you have
Okay.
and the resources that are available for people.
So I actually put up a video course. It's called ADHD Friendly Ways to Manage Your Money. And it's 12, not actually 13 videos talking about all the different strategies that, that you can use, how to budget, how to save, how to approach debt, how to deal with a partner, how to get started, all those different things. And in addition to offering the videos, it also comes with weekly group coaching. So for a year. So basically, because, making these changes is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just getting past the stigma is hard enough. So this way you can watch the videos, come to group coaching. I'm more than happy to hold your hand, answer questions, do all that kind of thing. So if and the cost of the course is $349 and you have access for a year. So I have given this course live and it's helped people with that. And now it's out there for everybody. So you can contact me. I'm at Constellation ADHD Coach at
Mm-hmm.
gmail.com. That's very long. I apologize, but I like it. So
Go to her page and click on the link.
that's the other idea. Yes.
Um, yes, I think people underestimate the value that group coaching can have. So I do a weekly group coaching program too, and for women with ADHD, and we talk about some of the challenges of just navigating work and life and just the things that come up that impact your ability to be successful in that context. And just just being in a space where you can unmask and have honest conversations with other people and then also get some feedback
Mhm.
from what other people's experiences are, or sometimes it's, especially with ADHD, right, it's always easier to help support somebody else's problems than it is for your own because you're not as emotionally connected to it or not. And so thinking about, are there group coaching programs that you can access to help you navigate certain challenges that you're experiencing, whether or not it's work, whether or not it's money, whether or not it's relationships, etc. And so the two of us are offering you an opportunity to be able to get not only just some individual support and some direct resources to navigate these challenges, but also an environment where you can get some feedback from some other people that may be experiencing that too. Um, it's
Absolutely.
it's important. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
my little blurb
Thank
for.
you. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, and you're right. I mean, in these group coaching sessions, it's well, you think you had that, well, I did that, and it's just you can just feel the tension uh, just melting
Mhm.
because we're not alone, and
Yeah,
that
you're not wrong.
having that connection is just so
Yeah.
helpful. So,
And these IG lives too are to remind you that you're not alone. There are other individuals with ADHD that are having difficulties with all the different challenges or different topics that we're talking about, right? And so we talked about money over the past year, a couple months, I guess. We've talked about therapy. We've talked about developing a business. There's just a variety of different topics that I've been coming on live and talking about here. So make sure that you continue to follow me. Make sure that you are following Annette as well. Set an alarm for my page so that you know what else is coming up. Next week, we're going to be having a conversation about strength-based coaching and what that looks like and how it can be supportive for ADHDers. So that's the topic for next week.
okay,
And
that sounds good.
yes, so I'm glad. Yeah, we talked about a lot of things. We had a nurse practitioner come in and talk about the challenges of just accessing ADHD medications and some of the things that come up from from her perspective. So there's a lot of good content on here. All the replays are going to be on YouTube, so you can go ahead and listen to them later if you would like, and fast forward if you just want to get to certain parts, um, or put it on the 2x speed or the 1.5x speed in order to kind of get through it a little bit faster. So that information is available for you. So I'll see y'all next week. I may be randomly popping on live sometimes too, because it's just easier. I feel like I'm actually talking to somebody versus talking to myself when I'm doing pre-made videos. But yeah, so I'm glad that thank you so much again for coming. I hope that everybody that was listening got a lot out of it. And if you need some additional support in any of these areas, whether or not it's navigating work or navigating your money, reach out to
Thank
us.
you so much.
Thank you. Have a good
You
night. Bye.
too. Bye.